All right, you know who my next guest is. I got the former Strikeforce middleweight champion of the world, Jake Shields, on the show. Jake, how are you, sir?
Good man. Just between workouts, coming in real quick, stopped by, made some food, and now I'm knocking out this interview. So how are you doing?
I'm good. I very much appreciate you making the time to speak with me here today. A lot to get to here today, and I just want to start with what you're doing here now in the MMA world. I know you're at Xtreme Couture doing some coaching. Is that pretty much your main focus here moving forward?
Well, I just kind of moved to Vegas, like California for a little bit. Not sure if it's permanent or not. And coach wasn't something I was planning on doing. Just kind of fell into it. There's so many guys around and started helping some people out. Something I enjoy. So I wouldn't say it's like not like a full time second career for me or anything. It's something I do to fun and keep me involved in the sport, which is kind of nice because I stayed away from the sport for a couple of years and it's getting me re-involved with seeing all these young, hungry up and comers and working with a few vets. I just recently started working with Misha Tay a little bit. She's another vet that's been in it, not quite as long as me, but been in it forever. So that's interesting. She's making a comeback. So
Yeah, no doubt about it. As far as active fighters in the UFC, I mean, I know Francis Ngannou is there. You got Tim Johnson, another heavyweight, fighting for the Bellator championship this Friday. Who are some of the guys that maybe the hardcore fans would know that you're working with there on a regular?
man, I mean, there's so many guys in and out there. So a lot of guys I work with occasionally, but I've been working with Patchy Mix a lot. He's a really top Bellator guy. He's improving really fast. Justin Janus is fighting this weekend coming up. So it's just there's a lot of guys I work with a little bit, but not like all the time. Just work with them occasionally, like Danny Ige, a tiny bit, guys like that. So
What was your, I guess, overall assessment of Ige's performance against the Korean Zombie? I've always been a big fan of Ige, and unfortunately, that fight didn't go his way. I was actually listening to Jimmy Smith on Sirius Radio the other day, and he seemed to point towards that maybe like when Ige's fighting like the top five guys in the division, it might be a mental block where he doesn't have the confidence. Do you think that's accurate, or do you just feel like maybe it's just a tough matchup?
yeah, it's a tough matchup. I think Ige, I think he'll definitely break the top five. He's still young and new to the game. He kind of had a quick rise, and it was a good fight. I thought he was winning the stand-up exchanges. Korean Zombies just looked great. He was able to get takedowns and just slightly outpace him. Had his back a couple times. Did great back control. I mean, I give Korean Zombie a lot of credit. It was a close fight, of course, but Korean Zombie just stayed one step ahead of him on the grappling exchanges. He needs to go back and maybe touch up. He was doing a lot of striking, maybe focus and do a lot of grappling for 6 months or something.
Yeah. It's been quite a while since we've seen you compete as a professional mixed martial artist. I know you've been doing a lot of submission underground at tournaments and whatnot. Is that something that you're going to continue to do here moving forward? And is there a chance that maybe your fans can see you climb back into the cage and compete in MMA?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of those submission things to stay. It's a fun way to stay competitive. As far as MMA goes, I never officially retired. Haven't fought in a while. Haven't been looking for fights, but you never do know. If someone offers me a fight that interests me, I'd hop back in there. You see all these guys jumping in their mid 40s now and fighting, so it's fun. Like I'm not going to go and try to win the UFC title again, but I would maybe do some one off fights, and I mean, why not if something pops up?
The last time you actually fought MMA, I believe it was against John Fitch in New York City. I was actually cage side at that fight, and who was it? It was Justin Tuck who came and sat down right next to me.
Oh
And
yeah,
he
no,
said,
Justin.
yeah, and he said that he'd been working with you and getting some working out there when he was with the Raiders. What is that like when you're seeing all these professional athletes, that are really getting into MMA and wanting to, learn that craft?
Yeah, no, it was cool. I had him. I didn't follow football at all, so it was like him, Marshawn Lynch. I didn't know who these guys were at first because my strength conditioning trainer was also training these guys, and they were just, I could tell they're obviously football players. And I got to know them; they're cool dudes. And I just realized, like, oh damn, these guys are like really famous. They're some of the big stars in the sport. They're like such cool dudes, and it was cool working alongside those football players. Those guys are, so fast and so explosive.
Did you ever get a chance to roll around with Tuck? I mean, because he literally is the size of an oak tree. That guy is massive.
We played around a little bit, no like hardcore rolling, but we played a little bit. I think the trainer didn't want them going too hard and pulling muscles because they're so big, but they're not used to knowing how to flow. So he's a little worried they'd pull some things out going live.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. And I did want to ask you just about everything that you accomplished in your career. Again, as I said in the intro, you were the middleweight Strikeforce champion. You fought GSP for the welterweight title in the UFC. I mean, for my money, you're one of the best welterweights that's ever done it. How do you feel you stack up like all time with the greats?
Yeah, it's that's always a tough question. It's hard to say. The greatest, in my opinion, is probably GSP. I lost a close decision to him, so unfortunately lost that one. But it gets it's tricky. I think I'm definitely one of the greatest. Beat Tyron Woodley when he was in his prime. Beat a lot of the top guys. So I think I'm definitely up there in the top 3 or 4 for sure.
When you look at the welterweights right now in the world, like how do you feel those guys would stack up in your era? Because you guys, there were so many great welterweights when you fought in GSP. It was so deep. And, right now you got Usman, Covington, Masvidal. If Nick Diaz comes back, there's a lot of great fighters at 170. How do you feel the eras compare?
I mean, they're both tough eras. I think the guys today are great too. I'm not going to knock them by any means. These guys, Usman looks phenomenal, and he improved every fight. Before he was relying on his wrestling, but now he's showing knockout power and looking great. He's been impressive. He's on a huge win streak, and a lot of those guys, the Covingtons, there's it's a stacked division again. So it's divisions go through phases. I think I was definitely in a stacked time, but it's stacked again.
Yeah, I always like to ask fighters like yourself who are, legends of the sport, this question. When you think of like a Mount Rushmore of mixed martial artists, I know that's super tough, but who comes to mind? Because there's only 4 spots. Is there a couple of people that really stand out to you?
I mean, GSP and Anderson probably stand out. Those guys. I mean, I'm maybe a little biased though, because that's my era. So guys are probably always going to kind of lean towards their era. So it's hard not to have bias, but I go towards those guys. I mean, John Jones hasn't lost. You got to look at him. I like guys like Fedor. At the end of his career, he didn't do as good, but he had such a crazy run. So I don't know. It gets tough.
Yeah. As far as the GSP matchup goes, is there something when you look back at that fight where maybe you feel like if you did something different that you could have had a chance to win, or is that just a fight where you went up against a guy in his prime and it was just a tough matchup?
I mean, both. I mean, he's phenomenal and a hard guy to beat. That's why he's considered one of the greatest and the greatest of all time. But I think fight was so close. Maybe if I would have pushed a little harder, a little earlier, towards the end, I started really getting confidence and started taking the later rounds. If I'd have pushed a little harder. Also, I think the last round or so, he couldn't really see out of one of his eyes, but I didn't know that at the time. I would have really tried pushing for it then. But overall, I think it was still a good fight and close. He was a great fighter.
I've been a hardcore fan of the sport for a while now, and got my journalism degree and moved into doing this. But did you envision the sport back when you were competing evolving into what it is now? Because it was popular back then, and now it's just like on another stratosphere. It's really unbelievable where the sport of MMA has evolved to.
Yeah, when I was first involved, it was kind of crazy because we only could fight in Indian reservations in a couple of states. It was banned on pretty much all TV. No one hardly knew what it was. So it was really weird. He told me doing like pro wrestling. So it was always a little frustrating at first, being like, man, why is the sport not picking up? But I loved it so much and figured it would blow up one day. It was a matter of time. And then sure enough, it did. And when it blew up quick. People got addicted. And I kind of, I kind of thought it would one day. So it was just too exciting. I never could get why more people weren't into it. I'm like, this is like the greatest sport and no one wants to watch it. So I kind of expected it to blow up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very well said. I got to ask you about the Diaz brothers. I mean, you're an official member of the Scrap Pack, and if you can't tell by my background, I'm a big fan of both of them. What you said, and I believe, I don't know if it was an interview or you tweeted it, but you said that you felt like Masvidal would make sense for Nick Diaz in his comeback fight for the BMF title. I 100% agree with that. I feel like that's exactly what should happen.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he's been, Masvidal's been a lot more active, but I just think Nick is still so good, and it's a fight. I just think from a fan perspective, it's an exciting fight. They both got that street cred, the bad motherfucker. They both the kind of guys you look at as, the real dudes in the sport. So who wouldn't want to see that? I know I would as a fan.
Is there anybody else that stands out that you feel like would be a good matchup for Nick?
It's hard to say. I just think he should fight someone who's been around for a while. I don't think it makes sense to have a fight upcomer. That'd be stupid. He's a mega star. He's also been out for a while though. So it makes sense he's still phenomenal, still great shape, but it makes sense to put him against another marquee star. Plus, Nick's don't want pay-per-view points. They want to do a fight that sells so he can get paid like he deserves.
I mean, how many pay-per-views would a card where Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz co-main and main event? I mean, that would just be mega. That'd be probably the biggest card of the year, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would be massive. Both the Diaz brothers back. I mean, that would be just huge. And they could market the hell out of it. Plus, all the hardcore fans and the new fans. They became superstars in the mainstream now as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, the takeaway from the Nate Leon Edwards fight, a lot of people, felt like, Rocky was going to go in and win that fight. And then Nate had a chance maybe late if he were to, exhaust him and use his great cardio. And he almost finished him, man. That 5th round, he caught him. He had Edwards wobble. Do you feel like Nate maybe missed an opportunity to get a 5th round finish?
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's watching it, I'm like, so frustrated what happened. But when you're in there, it's a different story, That's why I talked to Nate after. I'm like, man, what happened? He's just like, I maybe said it in a nicer way. But it's like you said, he had blood in his eye and sweat in his eye. So he rocked him. He felt the punch land. So he felt that he rocked him, but he didn't see the leg wobble. So he didn't realize how rocked he was. That's kind of why he pointed, because he knew he hit him, but he didn't realize he was like basically out. And then by the time he was staring at the guy, he saw he was a little wobbly. And that's when he started pushing. But then he'd already waited like 3 or 4 seconds and let him recover. So it's easy for us from the outside to be like, why didn't you finish it? But there's when you talk to him, the guy's got blood in his eye. You couldn't see how hurt he was. So it's easy to understand, the missed opportunity. Now for sure it's gotta be bothering him, but still it was a great performance. He came away. It's a rare guy when you can lose a fight and still raise your stock, which Nate did.
Yeah, 100%. He's always must-see TV. I'll buy every pay-per-view the guy's on. Now, I did want to ask you, too, about welterweight versus lightweight with Nate, because, he's fighting at 170, and a lot of people feel like, he might be better served if he's fighting at 55. Is that accurate, or do you feel like maybe at this stage of his career, welterweight's where he should be?
Yeah, it's really a tough one because he's kind of stuck in the middle. He has a huge cut to 55s, and he's a little undersized for welterweight. So it's kind of he's one of those guys stuck in the middle. So, but ultimately, if he wants to be big, if he's trying to go title run, it might make sense at 55s. Although he showed the number one contender, he almost knocked out. So he almost got a title shot even in the 70s, like the weight up. So it shows he's not just a superstar after almost 20 years pro. He still is actually one of the best in the world. Mm-hmm. People don't realize, even though he's not that old, he started fighting. I mean, I've known him since he was 16. I don't know. He must turn pro at 18, but he was doing amateur fights at like 16, 17. So he's been doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And obviously, a couple of weeks from now, you got Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, the trilogy, and everyone wants to see the Nate Diaz Conor McGregor trilogy. Do you feel like if Conor gets this win over Dustin, that'll set up the fight with Nate that everyone wants to see?
That would be a fight I would love, but I think they'll give Conor a title fight if he wins. So that would make sense to do a title fight at 55s, even though the Nate fight would sell a lot better. So maybe they would do that instead. Because but they probably jump to a title shot.
Who do you think they match up with Nate if it's not Conor next?
I mean, they could maybe do whoever loses the Poirier McGregor. I think either one of those fights would be mega.
Again, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes here to join me and talk about everything in your world MMA here today. If there's any appearances you're going to be making or any thing in the future where some fans can come out and see you, the floor is yours. Tell people where to find you.
Yeah, I'll be an appearance here in Vegas for the fight week with the High Rollers. I think it's Thursday, so I don't have exact information for that. I'll post that on my Instagram. So I'm doing that. I might be competing at High Rollers, so trying to find the opponents. That's a possibility. So that's that fight week in Vegas. That'll be mega.